Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very, very accomplished individual from the space of wellness from the Netherlands, Mr. Mark Paasman. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir.
Mark,
I'm honored to be here.
Thank you. Mark is an expert in the field of stress, anxiety, and PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. Mark is a former soldier who has made it his life's mission to help others. So, Mark, before we talk about stress, anxiety, and PTSD, tell me a little bit about your own amazing journey.
Well, it's been quite a ride. Let me put it that way. A very long story short, I became a soldier when I was 18, got operational deployed for 7 years. And one of my tasks was to jump out of helicopters when other people were in distress, usually above water. So to paint that picture, think about hurricane season in the Caribbean. And I would be the one jumping out of the helicopters trying to save people. Subsequently, I was a Royal Dutch Navy diver and specialized in bomb disposal.
Amazing.
So we had several challenges, so to speak. And in total, I had 7 operational incidents and never understood what went wrong. In those periods of times, things were never spoken about. So when I got honorably discharged, I stepped into a life of what I thought was normalcy. Fled to Southeast Asia, became a dive instructor. And then when I came back, I met the mother of my children. And got into a career in the offshore industry. Became quite a successful business development and marketing executive, flew all over the world. However, that fairy tale ended when I got hit by a car with 70 kilometers an hour in 2015. Life said, it stops here. That's it. I couldn't flee anymore. And subsequently, I ended up in the most scary, horrific place I knew, and that was in my head. I couldn't flee anymore. My whole body was out of order, and I got in a very dangerous position where I got addicted to the drugs they gave me in the hospital. I already was alcohol addicted. I mean, we learned that as a military person quite early, and things went south up to the point that I didn't want to live anymore. And that went all downhill very quickly because of the chronic pain, the care system, where I spent 8 years talking to 9 psychologists who basically kept me sick in the way they were talking, the terminology they used, and the amount of drugs they kept giving me. The moment I told my best friend, Daniela, which I know for 22 years, that I didn't want to live anymore because of the pain and because of the extreme nightmares and the et cetera, all the horrific things. She said, "Okay, that's it. I'm going to take care of you." And she gave me a moment where I could take a pause because she was not hunting me. And she gave PTSD this space where when I got diagnosed with multiple military trauma, I got stamped that I was sick. Oh, you're sick. And she gave me platform to start studying again. She connected me with meditation, how the quantum field works, and I started studying again. And that's where this epic journey started about 4 years ago.
Wow.
And I studied and studied for thousands and thousands of hours for 1.5 years, from the complete spectrum between quantum physics, neurochemical and neurological based studies, up to Tao, the Tao, Buddhism, Taoism, meditation, Einstein scriptures on the quantum field. Everything I put together, and I extracted a methodology, a stepping plan of 9 steps. And when I wrote that hypothesis, I thought, okay, and I did about 21 hypotheses, but that one I did execute on myself. And within 7 days, I had no more nightmares. I didn't wake up screaming or kicking.
Wow.
I didn't walk on the street armed. My chronic nerve pain in my shoulder was gone. My ear ringing was gone. Can you imagine?
Wow.
Walking around with pain up to the point that you don't want to live anymore, and then suddenly it's gone?
Amazing.
Or the nightmares after 22 years of nightmares, and then suddenly you're sleeping like a baby? That's incomprehensible for me. At that point in time, I was like, what? Wow.
Amazing.
And Daniela said, Mark, you have to realize that you have broke the code. You got it. And it is at that point in time, I asked 2 brothers who served in Afghanistan, I said, I need your brain. I need your head. Because I want to do a proper knowledge transfer based on what I wrote here. And they called back in a month. And guess what?
They were
Mark, yeah, exactly. You have to do something with this because I'm sleeping again after all those years. And that's the moment I started calling Defense, Veterans Affairs, the police, the National Police, the Ministry of Defense, you name it. I called them and they said, who are you? Where's your white coat? Where are your credentials and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, but all right, guys, whatever you want, right? I have my life back. So good luck. And I walked, this was my last effort. I walked 200 kilometers without food, water, luxury, money from the north of Holland back to Zwijndrecht, where Daniela and I started living. And just to get attention for young veterans. This was my last stand, so to speak, hoping that all those organizations would come to me and say, okay, let's talk. And guess what? No organizations, but the line of partners, kids, veterans, active duty, they were lined up. We're at the garden, please help me. And that's when, as you started giving back, I started giving back because I started training.
Oh, amazing.
And I've been doing that, and I've been doing knowledge transfer for the last 2.5 years, and I have been able to reach 89 men and women, fire department, police, war veterans, up to normal civilians who have burnout or stress, and it's 100% passing rate. Everybody who I helped have their life back or regained their life. So
Amazing.
from survival to living again.
Fantastic. So Mark, tell me, what are some misconceptions about stress, anxiety, and PTSD? I mean, what an amazing story you've had.
I think we have to cut that question a little bit up, because stress and anxiety and PTSD, stress and PTSD I can take out. And put together, because stress is obviously in the 4-letter abbreviation PTS. That's stress. Stress is one of the most used terminology on a day-to-day basis. But if you ask people, what do you mean, or what is stress? They need a minute or two to formulate a question based on what they think might be the truth. Now, isn't that a little strange? Stress knows a fourfold: emotion, mind, body, and neurochemically. Stress. If these four are not tackled at the same time, you will not reach 0%. That's a big point. I was never taught that. Have you been taught that stress has a fourfold? No. So if nobody knows that, then nobody can get out of stress. So, and then here comes the answer, or the moral of the story. Living in stress and anxiety or fear has become the new normal on a global basis.
Wow.
Being fed with a continuous flood of disinformation based on social media, TV, news, blah, 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 blah. And that's see that circle? That's a dangerous circle. Have I answered that correctly?
You have, absolutely.
Thank
and
you.
What are some of the self-help or coping strategies that you have developed that you may want to share with some of our viewers and listeners?
I'd love to share. I think the most important step one is to realize that we need to start asking more questions based on what we're on terminology based. What are you using for words? Like, what is the difference between emotions and feelings? What's the difference between mind and thoughts? Ask somebody. I don't ask them. And 100 meters further, ask someone again. Total different person. You will get 4 different answers in a kilometer. That's a little weird, isn't it? And I think if you start asking the right questions in order to know what is really going on in this lovely meat suit, because that's all it is, I think that's step one in order to realize that you're using terminology that is simply not correct. So, and so the first step for me is, in order to provide knowledge, is you have a voice, and that voice can be heard right here. If you talk with the voice, when you talk without sound, you hear your voice literally here. But there's a second voice, and that's right there. How does that work? Who's that? That's a voice that actually keeps you active or acting based on fear and experience from the past. And I call that ego. However, if I talk with my mind, I can decide to sit down and say, well, this is an empty cup of coffee, or that's left. I actually can manage the neurochemical process in my head, in my brain. And when I realized that, then I started saying, I am positive, grateful, and full of confidence about 50 times a day. And I slowly started realizing that I was acting I was the first one to act neurochemically in my brain, versus to grab your phone and started scrolling through your social media platforms. Somebody else is acting neurochemically in your brain first, instead of you. When I started doing that, things started changing. So that's a tip of the iceberg, so to speak, what I could share with your viewers.
Very interesting. And tell me, how important is mindfulness and meditation to managing stress?
It is a part. It is a part of. And again, so here we come with the stress pillars: emotional, mind, body, and neurochemically. So if you do meditation, I found that it basically secures stress based on emotional. If you do a proper long meditation, you will get stress down in your body as well. However, your mind, because if you start chewing on issues or fears or whatever is providing the stress, you're basically, if you do a meditation, you will not resolve that. Neurochemically, you're definitely not resolving that. So you have two pillars of stress done, getting it down with meditation and mindfulness. However, there are two left, and they're blasting on 100%. So in a day, or 12 hours, or 24, or 72, you will get that level of stress up again. Hence the point, and all the people I've taught and guided, they said, yeah, I've been going through all types of therapies, but it never worked. It always got back. And how does that work? Why do I get that therapy, but then in a few days or a few weeks, I'm back to level of critical? I said, well, this is the whole point. Stress is not tackled in fourfold. So it's the moral of the answer of your question is, it is definitely important, but it's not the full circle.
Very interesting. My next question is that, you shared with me your own amazing journey and the kind of stresses you went through. I want to ask you, what is the long-term impact of chronic stress on our physical and mental being?
Brutally honest, you will get really sick and then you die.
Wow.
Stress is a killer, and stress is something, again, we think is normal, fear is normal, and we accept it in our normal life. But you will get really, really ill, and it starts with an ache, blah, blah, blah. But I have literally seen people unable to walk because of the physical pain of stress, lower back pain, usually financially. Trauma is stored in the hips. Can't walk. With the methodology I designed, people will actually walk within 30 minutes because of the stress release. So yeah, the stress is a killer, and that's not like in a week and not in a month, but eventually you will lose that fight because stress makes you ill.
Wow. Wow. And my next question is that, how can individuals or parents of children recognize symptoms of stress either in themselves or in the children?
First thing what pops in my head is take away the iPad and see how big the mushroom cloud is.
Okay.
You will see proper stress. Hide the mobile phone and see the panic. No, I think when I liberated myself from the stress of post-trauma, within 4 months, my kids went from a lower level of school to 2 steps higher in their education. 2 steps, not 1. That's usually done in a year or 3. They did it in 3 months. And that's basically what I see is of the stress in the house, the energy of what I provided as a veteran and fighting PTSD and fighting chronic pain. And and the level of stress I provided. And then when I liberated myself, those kids just went like, pew. So I think us as parents have no idea how dangerous the stress is, what we accept as normal based on the work pressure, the social pressure, TV, social media, etc.
Interesting.
I think this is definitely something to, sit down and think with your mind and talk things over, because it is definitely rubbing off on the kids.
So one of the things that you have spoken about is stress related to the very, very dangerous kind of a life that you were leading, and dangerous. I'm just using that word because I can't think of anything else. But jumping out of helicopters and being on the disposal squad, etc. For people who get affected by stress, not in such dangerous environments, are there any different ways to cope?
Of course, yes. I mean, it's all nice and fun and games that I was operational deployed and did things you see only in the movies. But that's not the point. The point is that stress is, as I said before, I lived a life within the offshore industry, meaning that I'm not shy of working 60, 70, 80 hours a week and trying to perform and do a good job. The point is that there's a disconnect with the definition of what stress is.
Correct.
It has to start with the right. We need to start talking in the same language, in the sense of, if you understand the effect of stress and what it means on the long term, that so you will not live, but your battery, you have a battery, I have a battery, you feel energized or not. If you sleep 3 days for 3 hours a night, you will know about it. But stress is a continuation of sucking out your energy. And there are so many people just barely surviving because they have accepted stress as a new normal, the fear as a new normal, based on, yes, but I have responsibilities because I have to do this work, or I have to travel that long, or there's so many people who have such a bad relationship based on communication at work, being treated poorly. It creates stress. So people are stuck. And that's keeping them in that loop of stress. And then
And my last question to you, Mark, and this is for the thousands of people who will listen to our conversation. What would you say are 3 lessons from your own amazing journey of handling your own stress that you would want our viewers and listeners to take away if they're ever confronted with such a situation?
I think step 1 would be realize that time is a tool. And if you take a marker, a black marker, and you have an A4 in front of you, you draw a horizontal line on it, and you start marking, okay, step day 1, 6 a.m. wake up. Up to 7 o'clock, I do breakfast and shower, blah, blah, blah. I travel 1 hour to work, okay. But all the way to when you go to bed, and then start marking of what you have done in that time based on, will it give energy to me or is it energy out? So work is obviously energy out.
Correct.
Walking the dog could be energy in. Or are you talking about work already on the mobile phone or going through social media? I would like to ask or give away the incentive of make your timeline and be brutally honest with yourself on how much time do you give yourself on a day-to-day basis to charge up. So you have a black marker, a green marker, and a red marker.
Yeah.
And just start making that timeline and see from a helicopter view how much green there actually is.
Amazing.
You will be shocked. You will be shocked. You provide more energy to your mobile phone than to yourself.
Wow. Wow.
The result of that on a long-term basis is that you are not steering your own ship. You are on autopilot on a day-to-day basis. And you know what? That's 95% autopilot. Unconditioned, subconscious unconditioned behavior. That's crazy.
Amazing. Amazing.
That's literally the rat race.
Yeah.
Two would be look up my book. I'm an author, the author of the book Liberated from PTSD. And the book is internationally available based on Amazon. And within that book, you see all the terminology. The terminology has to be sorted first. You know, the difference between feelings and emotions, the difference between thoughts and mind. How does that work? So that would be tip number 2. And 3, if you have nightmares or experience stress, try to cut out, and this is just for a week, try to cut out social media and television. Just for 7 days. Give yourself the opportunity to disconnect to that digital pollution, so to speak. And then start with repeating to yourself with your voice, I am positive, grateful, and full of confidence over 50 times during the day.
Wow. Okay.
And be, again, brutally honest by the end of the week. Make your timelines and see, and then consolidate. Okay, check out how you were sleeping then, or what much stress or nightmares you had then, and then within a week. Because my treatment right now, I have a war veteran coming in this afternoon for session 1 this afternoon. He has not slept next to his wife for 9 years because he's too scared killing her in his sleep.
Wow.
For 9 years. By coming Friday, I will have liberated him from PTSD, and they will be sleeping next to each other by Friday. That's how fast it can work.
Amazing. Amazing. Amazing.
So not fight, but realize that you're not driving your brain right now. That's 95% subconscious conditioned behavior. Amazing. And that should be on the top of your to-do list. Get the keys of my brain.
Fantastic. Mark, on that note and your amazing conversation on so many different types of ways to handle stress, anxiety, and PTSD, thank you so much for speaking to me. Somehow I missed your book when you had sent me your profile, but I'm going to ask all our viewers and listeners to go and check out Mark Paasman's book, which is Liberated from PTSD. Thank you for speaking to me about so many ways to be able to overcome stress. And thank you for doing such an amazing work for so many people and relieving them of the stress, which is a very, very dangerous thing to have in the long run. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck.
A big pleasure. Thank you, sir. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.